Hey guys, John V here from PhoneArena. Right now you're watching our video comparison between the Google Nexus 10 and the Apple iPad 4, two of the premier tablets on the scene right now. They have a lot in common. For example, you're getting high-resolution displays on both tablets, dual-core processors, and there's just a lot to like in terms of the experience with both of them. But ultimately, we're going to find out exactly which one's going to reign supreme this holiday season. So let's find out. So it's great that both tablets have appreciable designs that we like. They're very different, of course, just because of price point, but with the iPad 4, it stands out for its premium nature. Of course, being the more expensive tablet, you have that brushed metallic casing, which gives it the added strength of sturdiness, and of course, durability as well, and it's really nice to see that on there. It's still fairly streamlined too, and fairly comfortable to hold in the hand, though you do notice the weightiness over the Nexus 10. So in comparison with Google's offering, it stands out for its plastic casing. It's not as sturdy compared to the iPad 4 with its construction, but nevertheless, we do like the clean finish it has thanks to the rubbery soft touch material it's using throughout its body, and at the same time, it's relatively streamlined too with its construction. In fact, it's actually thinner and also slightly lighter than the iPad 4. Before the Google Nexus 10, the iPad actually had the notoriety of offering the highest resolution display in a tablet. So the iPad 4 here features a 9.7-inch 2048 by 1536 IPS LCD Retina display, and its pixel density equates to 264 pixels per inch. In contrast, the Google Nexus 10 has actually eclipsed the resolution of the iPad's Retina display. It's a 10-inch 2560 by 1600 True RGB Real Stripe PLS display, and its pixel density is higher at 300 pixels per inch. So technically, the Google Nexus 10 has the higher resolution, but when it comes to actual real-world usage, it's almost difficult to say exactly which one's the sharper looking between the two, because they're both very sharp and have a lot of clarity, especially noticeable here in the web browser as we're looking at our website in a zoomed out view. It's very difficult to say from a normal viewing distance which one is the sharper looking between the two. So even though the numbers show that the Google Nexus 10 wins in that area, they're both going to be the same. On top of that, there's a lot of similarities too with these displays that make them very lovely. They have some wide viewing angles, strong brightness output, and their color reproductions are the same. In fact, they produce warmer tones, which give it a little bit level of vibrancy and saturation. Again, very appealing as a whole. And of course, when it comes to outdoor visibility, they're both wonderful in that aspect as well. Above their respective displays, they both feature front-facing 1.3 megapixel cameras, which have the ability to shoot videos in 720p. Well, on the opposite sides of their screens, with the iPad 4, it features the iconic recessed home button that's been a staple of all of Apple's touch devices. And with the Google Nexus 10 below the display, you can't see it here, but it actually features a pulsating LED notification light. It's great that the dedicated buttons on both tablets offer really springy responses when you press them, but it's the iPad set that actually have a more distinctive feel because they're raised more. When it comes to speakers, the Google Nexus 10 benefits from two. They're found both on the left and right sides of the tablet, whereas on the iPad 4, there's just a single one towards the back edge. And finally, for those who yearn to shoot videos and photos with the tablets, you'll appreciate the fact that these two both feature 5-megapixel autofocus cameras, which have the ability to shoot 1080p videos, but it's the Google Nexus 10 that adds an LED flash. As we dive deeper to their respective platform experiences, we begin to find that the Google Nexus 10 adheres more to the power user than the iPad 4. So on the iPad, it's the iOS 6 experience, and between the two, we'll get to Apple for having the more simplistic and straightforward interface between the two. It's a lot easier to learn for first-time tablet users. You still have a nice notifications panel, not as extensive compared to the Google Nexus 10 one, and on top of that, you have also Siri as your personal digital assistant to guide you throughout your day and give you some useful information. And on top of that, it also employs some very useful and practical gestures to actually navigate between open applications and even go back to the home screen if you wanted to. But it still doesn't really match the extensive offerings found with the Google Nexus 10 and its newer Android 4.2 Jelly Bean experience. And we have to say, again, this is for a power user here because first and foremost, you get a better notifications panel where you have actionable items too. too. And it's also great that you have access to some connectivity features directly from the home screen. So you have to go into the settings like on the iPad 4 to adjust the brightness or even turn off or turn on the Wi-Fi. On top of that, you have Google Now, which is similar to Siri. So you get your personal digital assistant. It gives you some other useful information. For example, traffic conditions and even sports scores. And the other new things found with Google, the Android 4.2 experience, that you have native widget support in the lock screen. So you get a sneak peek at some of the items that you need. For example, your email directly from there without having to unlock the device. So it's great. And as we said, it just goes to show that Google has really improved upon the tablet experience, though technically we'll still hand it to the iPad for having a more robust and quality third-party app selection, but still, the gap is closing with Google's offering. Surprisingly enough, in an age of quad cores, these two premier tablets are powered by dual cores instead. On the iPad 4, it's a dual-core 1.4 GHz Apple A6X processor with 1 GB RAM, and on the Nexus 10, it's a dual-core 1.7 GHz ARM-based Exynos processor with 2 GB of RAM. So on paper, you might think that the 2 GB of RAM would help with the Google Nexus 10, but honestly, it does exhibit a little bit of slowdown and even sometimes some lag, especially when we have live wallpaper activated and some graphically intensive widgets on board. We do notice that a little bit, but besides that, as far as their other basic operations, opening up applications, surfing the web, 3D gaming, they both exhibit the same level of performance, and overall they're both still pretty fast by today's standards. Of course, we prefer using the landscape keyboard options for typing up messages just because you get a more spacious layout with the keyboard, but between the two, when it comes to the portrait usage, we find the iPad 4 to be a little bit more usable thanks to the split-style keyboard. Without it, it's still very wide for our fingers to actually encompass the entire layout. Same thing applies to the Google Nexus 10, though you do have that swipe-like gestures in play as an alternative way of actually inputting text. But as we said, that split-style definitely helps. But beyond that, they're both pretty much similar with their performance, very accurate and responsive, so you know that the messaging experience is going to be great. There's no problem surfing the web with these two tablets just because they both provide for a very satisfying experience. So we have some fast page loads, smooth kinetic scrolling, and pinch zooming, and they also render web pages properly. And the last thing is that they have such high resolution displays, they make even the finest of text more than legible to the eye. But we do find that the Chrome browser on the Nexus 10 have a little bit more features than the Safari browser on the iPad 4. So you have the sharing functionality with both of them, but again, the Google Nexus 10 just has a little bit more options for that. And in addition to that, it utilizes these very useful gestures to quickly navigate between open tabs. On the surface, there isn't really much separating the music players of both tablets. They're both very conventional by today's standards, but with the Google Nexus 10, it really still continues to stand out for that very cool 3D carousel effect it has going on when you're browsing through your selection. Beyond that, as far as the audio quality, the Google Nexus 10's two speakers manages to put out just a little bit stronger volume tones over the single speaker on the iPad 4, but isn't by much, and even despite that, they're both very pleasant to hear at the loudest volume setting. So even though both tablets are more than equipped to play high-definition videos, we have to give it to the Nexus 10 just by a little bit, just because its 16:9 aspect ratio makes it more ideal when it comes to watching videos. You don't get those black bars as much compared to the iPad 4, and plus you need some conversion required to get 1080p videos to run on the iPad 4 as well. But beyond that, they both have brilliant-looking displays that stand out with their vibrant colors. They have smooth playbacks to make, of course, the experience more than satisfying. We know that these two tablets have 5-megapixel cameras, but when it comes to quality, we have to hand it to the iPad 4. It just seems to be sharper than what's produced on the Google Nexus 10. Now, the biggest difference is just details. It just seems as though there's more sharper-looking visuals on the iPad 4 versus the slightly duller tones seen with the Google Nexus 10. And at times, it can look a little bit muddy. When it comes to macro shots, they're both pretty much the same as we checked the photos out on a computer. When it comes to lower lighting situations, though, we do notice that the iPad 4 again produces the better results just because it doesn't have as much noise in its shots compared to the Nexus 10. But then again, the Nexus 10 has an LED flash to counteract some of those deficiencies. The still shot quality of both tablets is pretty good, very usable, but when it comes to actually shooting 1080p high-definition videos, there's no question about it. The iPad 4 is by far the better tablet. It just blows away what the Nexus 10 has to offer with its quality. The biggest difference here, again, is just pure details. You're able to make out a lot more things both in the foreground and in background with the iPad 4, whereas on the Nexus 10, it tends to come off very dull with its tone, soft looking too. On top of that, it's also flawed with some noticeable artifacting as we're panning very quickly. Who knows what it is, but it's the Google Nexus 10 that gives us the longer battery life between the two. It could be due to the optimizations found with Android 4.2 Jelly Bean, or it could be something related to its dual-core processor, but whatever it is, it just puts out the better results. In fact, it's so much so that we're able to get close to 2 days of normal usage out of a full charge, whereas on the iPad 4, it gets us past through the 1-day mark. Ultimately, it's just the aggressive price point attached to the Google Nexus 10 that really captures our attention and shows us why it gives us the most bang for the buck. At $400 versus $500 for the iPad 4, it truly is a marvelous thing to find. So with the iPad 4, it's great for its premium design. It's definitely up there in terms of tablet designs. On top of that, it takes some nice photos and videos, but beyond that, it can't quite match the feature set found with the Google Nexus 10. It has the highest resolution display out there on a tablet. You have all the great features and comprehensive options found with the Android 4.2 Jelly Bean experience, and you have also something that has a great battery life, almost double the battery life of the iPad 4, and we like it that you have easy video out access with its micro HDMI output, and you have also NFC. So for $100 less than the iPad 4, you're getting a great tablet in itself right there. So if you'd like to learn more about both tablets, guys, you can check our website, PhoneArena.com. This is John V. Thanks for watching.